April 23, 1985. A company kills the most recognized product in human history. Within 72 hours, 400,000 furious phone calls flood their headquarters. Protesters march in the streets holding signs that read, "We want the real thing." A psychiatrist hotline is set up for addicts suffering withdrawal. 79 days later, they surrender. This is the story of how Coca-Cola committed what ABC News called the marketing blunder of the century, and somehow, against all logic, survived. If you want to see how a $4 million decision destroyed 99 years of brand loyalty and forced the most powerful beverage company on earth to publicly admit defeat, smash that like button and subscribe. What you're about to discover is now taught in every business school as the ultimate lesson in don't fix what isn't broken. Let's dive in. To understand how Coca-Cola self-destructed, you need to understand what they built. In 1886, a pharmacist named John Pemberton created a syrup in Atlanta, Georgia. By 1985, that syrup had become the most valuable brand on planet Earth. Let me put this in perspective. Coca-Cola wasn't just a soda. It was American culture in a bottle. During World War II, General Eisenhower demanded Coca-Cola bottling plants follow troops into Europe. The company built 64 bottling plants overseas just to keep soldiers supplied. When American GIs liberated Europe, they handed out Coca-Cola. It became synonymous with freedom itself. By the 1970s, Coca-Cola controlled 60% of the global soft drink market. The formula was locked in a vault at SunTrust Bank in Atlanta. Only 2 executives knew it, and they weren't allowed to travel on the same plane. The brand had penetration that made it more recognized than the Christian cross. A 1970s study found that Coca-Cola was the second most understood phrase in the world after okay. They sold 9 billion cases per year. That's 350 million servings per day, every single day. The formula hadn't changed in 99 years, not once. That consistency was the brand. You could drink a Coke in Tokyo, New York, or Cairo, and it tasted exactly the same as it did in 1886. This wasn't just a product, it was a religion. And religions don't change their holy texts. But in 1975, something that seemed impossible started happening. The empire began to crack. Pepsi launched the Pepsi Challenge, blind taste tests in shopping malls where people chose between Coke and Pepsi without knowing which was which. The results were devastating. People preferred Pepsi's sweeter taste by 53% to 47%. Worse, Pepsi aired it as TV commercials. Millions watched real people choose Pepsi over Coke. It was public humiliation, and it was working. In 1975, Coca-Cola had 24.3% market share in U.S. supermarkets. Pepsi had 17.4%. By 1983, Coke had dropped to 21%, while Pepsi surged to 18.8%. The gap was closing fast. Inside Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta, panic was setting in. CEO Roberto Goizueta, who took over in 1981, watched the numbers with growing alarm. This was a man who'd risen through Coca-Cola's chemical research division. He believed in science, in data, in progress. And the data was screaming at him. The 99-year-old formula was losing. Diet Coke, launched in 1982 with a new formula, became the most successful consumer product launch in history. It proved you could change the formula and win. The cultural landscape was shifting too. Baby boomers wanted new. They wanted different. The phrase, "Coke is it," sounded outdated when MTV was redefining youth culture every single day. By 1984, Pepsi's momentum was undeniable. They signed Michael Jackson for $5 million, the biggest celebrity endorsement in history. Their Super Bowl ads were cultural events. Coca-Cola's executives made a decision. If you can't beat them with the old formula, change the formula. In September 1984, Project Kansas began. This was the codename for the top-secret mission to reformulate Coca-Cola. The name referenced the extreme secrecy of the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb in Kansas during World War II. The irony? They were about to detonate their own brand. Roberto Goizueta and President Donald Keogh assembled a task force led by Chief Marketing Officer Sergio Zeman. Their mission, create a new Coke that could beat Pepsi in blind taste tests. Over 6 months, they conducted 200,000 blind taste tests, the most extensive market research in corporate history. They spent $4 million on research alone. The new formula was sweeter, smoother, less acidic. It was designed to beat Pepsi at their own game, and in the taste tests, it worked. The new formula beat both Pepsi and original Coke by 6 to 8 percentage points. Goizueta looked at the data and saw victory. Focus groups said they'd buy it. The numbers were undeniable. But here's what they missed. They asked the wrong question. They asked, "Do you prefer this taste?" They never asked, "How would you feel if we permanently replaced Coca-Cola with this?" They tested preference. They never tested loyalty. In February 1985, the final decision was made. They would discontinue the original formula entirely and replace it with new Coke. Read that again. Discontinue. Not add to the lineup. Replace. When one executive suggested keeping both formulas, Goizueta reportedly said, "We can't have two Cokes in the marketplace." The old formula would die. They scheduled the launch for April 23, 1985, 99 years after Coca-Cola was born. April 23, 1985, 11:00 a.m. The New York Vivian Beaumont Theater at Lincoln Center. Roberto Goizueta takes the stage before 200 journalists from around the world. Behind him, giant screens showing the new logo. "The best has been made even better," Goizueta declares. "After 99 years, we believe the time has come to move to another level of leadership." The new formula would hit shelves immediately. The old formula would disappear forever. That same day, Coca-Cola bought every advertising slot on all 3 major TV networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. An unprecedented media blitz. Bill Cosby appeared in commercials declaring, "The best just got better." The company projected this would reverse their market share decline and crush Pepsi once and for all. Coca-Cola bottlers, the independent operators who actually produced and distributed the product, sat in the theater in stunned silence. They'd been told about new Coke only weeks before. Some were furious, but corporate had decided. Initial reactions from journalists were mixed. Some praised the boldness. Others questioned the wisdom. But nobody was prepared for what happened next. Within 24 hours, the first complaints arrived. Then a flood. Then a tsunami. Within 48 hours, Coca-Cola's headquarters received 5,000 angry phone calls per day. By the end of the first week, 40,000 letters. Furious, betrayed, heartbroken letters. Gay Mullins, a retired Seattle businessman, founded the Old Cola Drinkers of America and filed a class-action lawsuit demanding the original formula's return. Within weeks, his group had 100,000 members. In San Antonio, Texas, protesters marched through the streets carrying signs that read, "We want the real thing," a cruel twist on Coca-Cola's own slogan. They dumped new Coke in the street like the Boston Tea Party. A man from Mississippi wrote, "There are only 2 things in my life, God and Coca-Cola. Now you have taken one of those things away from me." Fidel Castro, yes, that Fidel Castro, publicly criticized new Coke as a sign of American capitalist decadence. Coca-Cola had achieved the impossible, uniting American consumers and communist dictators against them. By mid-May, call volume hit 8,000 per day. Coca-Cola set up a 1-800 hotline and hired psychiatrists to help operators deal with emotionally distraught callers. People weren't just complaining, they were grieving. One psychiatrist described it as a national case of mourning. On ABC's Nightline, host Ted Koppel opened a segment saying, "Some circles are calling this the Edsel of the 1980s. Comedian David Letterman joked, "Pepsi beat new Coke in taste tests. So did Windex." Geraldine Ferraro, who'd just run for vice president, told reporters, "They can change the Constitution, but they shouldn't mess with Coke." The hashtag didn't exist yet, but if it did, Yak New Coke fail would have broken Twitter. Market share continued falling. People weren't just avoiding new Coke, they were hoarding old Coke. Bottles of original formula sold on black markets for $30 each. By June, 2 months in, Pepsi's market share surged to 20.1%. Coca-Cola dropped to 20.5%. For the first time since World War II, Pepsi was within striking distance of overtaking Coke. The unthinkable was happening. Coca-Cola was losing the cola wars. Let's talk numbers, because they're brutal. In the 3 months after New Coke launched, Coca-Cola lost $30 million in direct revenue from returned product and promotional failures. Their stock price dropped 7% between April and July 1985, wiping out approximately $1.4 billion in market capitalization. Market share in supermarkets fell from 21.7% in March to 20.5% by June. That 1.2% might sound small, but in the $60 billion soft drink industry, that's a loss of $720 million in annual revenue. Meanwhile, Pepsi surged. Their market share jumped from 18.8% to 20.1% in the same period. Every point Coke lost, Pepsi gained. Bottlers, the backbone of Coca-Cola's distribution, were in open revolt. Bottling plants in cities across America refused to stop producing old Coke formula from remaining concentrate. Some lost millions as customers simply stopped ordering. The Southeast, Coca-Cola's heartland, saw the steepest declines. In Georgia, New Coke sales were 40% below projections within 6 weeks. Taste preference meant nothing when customers felt betrayed. Dr. Pepper and 7-Up also capitalized, running ads that essentially said, "We'd never change our formula on you." They picked up a combined 2% market share. But here's the craziest part. Diet Coke, launched 3 years earlier, was outselling New Coke in many markets. Customers preferred a completely different product over the improved flagship. The $4 million in research? Worthless. The advertising blitz? Backfired. The 200,000 taste tests? Measured the wrong thing entirely. For 11 weeks, Roberto Goizueta and Donald Keogh maintained their position. New Coke was the future. In early May, Goizueta told the press, "We're not that dumb, and we're not that smart." He insisted the taste tests proved consumers wanted this. Sergio Zeman, the CMO who championed the change, appeared on TV defending the decision. "We have research that proves this is what consumers want," he said. "The data doesn't lie." Except the data was measuring the wrong thing. By late June, the call volume exceeded 12,000 per day. Letters arrived in boxes. The Old Cola Drinkers of America lawsuit was gaining national media attention. Behind closed doors, panic. Bottlers threatened rebellion. Some discussed breaking contracts. The company that had operated like a dictatorship for 99 years was fracturing. On July 10, 1985, exactly 79 days after New Coke launched, Roberto Goizueta and Donald Keogh called a press conference. The date, intentional. July 11th was Peter Jennings' birthday at ABC News. They wanted maximum media coverage. At the press conference, Keogh spoke first. "We have heard you. We are bringing back the original formula of Coca-Cola." He looked directly at cameras and said 6 words that corporate America had almost never heard. "We have made a mistake. The original formula would return as Coca-Cola Classic. New Coke would remain on shelves alongside it." Goizueta added, "The passion for original Coke was something that just flat caught us by surprise. The simple fact is that all the time and money and skill poured into consumer research could not measure or reveal the deep and abiding emotional attachment to original Coca-Cola. It was the most public corporate surrender in American history. Sergio Zeman would later be fired." Goizueta kept his job but spent years explaining the decision. So, how did the most sophisticated company in the world make such a catastrophic mistake? 3 fatal errors. First error. They confused product preference with brand loyalty. The 200,000 taste tests measured which formula people preferred in a single sip. But Coca-Cola wasn't selling sips. They were selling an identity. People didn't drink Coke because it tasted best. They drank it because it was part of their childhood, their family barbecues, their American identity. That's not measurable in a focus group. Compare this to Apple. When they introduced the iPhone, They didn't ask, do you prefer a phone with buttons or without? They understood they were selling a vision, not a feature. Coca-Cola forgot they were selling nostalgia, not sugar water. Second era. They eliminated choice instead of adding options. Instead of introducing new Coke as an alternative, like they successfully did with Diet Coke, they murdered the original. This turned a product launch into a hostage situation. Look at how McDonald's handles menu changes. They test new items extensively, but rarely remove beloved classics entirely. When they discontinued the McRib, they learned to bring it back as a limited-time offer, creating desire without betrayal. Coca-Cola could have positioned New Coke as Coke 2 or Coke Gold and let the market decide. Instead, they forced consumers to accept or rebel. Consumers chose rebellion. Third error. They underestimated emotional attachment to an icon. Coca-Cola wasn't competing with Pepsi. They were competing with American cultural memory itself. When you attack something people associate with their childhood, with their grandparents, with picnics and baseball games, you're not changing a product. You're attacking their identity. This is why New York Yankees don't redesign their logo every decade. Why Harley-Davidson still sounds the same. Why Levi's 501s keep the same basic design. Some things aren't meant to evolve. They're meant to endure. The lesson? Never underestimate the power of, we've always done it this way, when this way is woven into cultural DNA. Here's my question for you. Was New Coke really a mistake, or the most brilliant marketing accident in history? Because Coca-Cola Classic went on to dominate Pepsi for the next 40 years. Some people think the whole thing was a conspiracy to make people appreciate the original. What do you think? Catastrophic failure or genius 4D chess? Drop your theory in the comments. If you enjoyed watching one of the world's most powerful companies completely self-destruct and somehow survive, smash that subscribe button because next week we're covering how Netflix almost killed itself with a $6 billion decision that made customers cancel in masses. See you then.